Maybe.
I have that. It's not a-
I looked at it, and said, look, it's small issues than what it was before.
Like this.
Nice job.
Coming out.
Okay, I would like to start the meeting. I'll be chairing the meeting until our chair will come. He has a commitment, so he will be late. And to start the meeting, we have a quorum. That's a good thing. We did not have it the last meeting. And we'll start with introductions.
Dennis Rutter, representing Sonoma County Alliance.
Brian Lang representing the 4th District.
Tom Banning, representing the 3rd District.
Eris Weaver, Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition.
Mark Hale, Building Industry Association.
Tom Conlon with the Sonoma County Conservation Coalition.
Bonner with the 1st District.
Jeff Blakesley representing SOS Roads.
Jerry Glazer, representing the Electric Auto Association.
Rick Lutman, League of Women Voters of Sonoma County.
Steve Bertelbaugh with the Sierra Club.
I'm Carol Taylor from North Bay Organizing Project.
In the back, please.
Dana Trey, SCTA, RCPA.
Chris Barney, SCTA, RCPA.
Tanya Hello.
RCPA.
Shauna Gauze, SCTA, RCPA.
And James Cameron, FCTA, RCPA.
And Renewal, SCTA, RCPA.
And
And then if you would like, Mr. Chair, I could read the names on Zoom just to make it easier on us. We have Adam Garcia here on the screen with the SCTA RCPA. We also have Kellen Gilbert and Sarah Owen from Pisenti and Brinker. And then we also have Linda Chaffin.
thank you. And I am Musa Abbasi, representing the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber. And the second item, public comments on items not on the regular agenda.
Those of you who were at our last meeting may recall that although we didn't have a quorum, we did have a robust discussion about one issue that was going before the board, which was the question of whether to modify our relation with Golden Gate Transit now or wait till after a survey. And I'm not sure how many of you monitor the meeting, but I thought you might want to know that the board essentially agreed with the opinion that most of us expressed, which is that we should go ahead with a renegotiation now, with the understanding that when more data comes in later, we can amend our plans. The vote was not unanimous. David Rabbit, supervisor from the 3rd District, and Gerard Giudice from Roanoke Park City Council, both of whom are members of MTC, voted against it.
Golden Gate.
Golden Gate, right.
Thank you. Any other comments? In the screen, I see none. We'll move to the administrative items. We did not have the chance to approve the August 26 meeting in the last meeting, so do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All second.
Any comments about the minutes? I see none. Let us vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Not present.
Any nays? I see none. The minutes approved. Do we need to, the last meeting, we did not have a quorum. So it was informal meeting, my understanding. And we have just the notes, not minutes, in the agenda. So any comments about the notes?
Provided for the committee's information.
Yeah. There's, okay. Measure M financials, who is presenting? That's for the audit.
Yes, I believe that would be me. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to share, similar to what we've done in the past. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right. So I'm Kellen Gilbert from Pisenti and Brinker. I'm the lead audit partner on the SCTA/Measure M financial statement audit. And with me is Sarah Owen, who is the supervisor on the engagement. And not with us, but I also wanted to point out that Brett Bradford is the engagement quality report reviewer, a key part of our system of quality control, and he performs the independent report review over the Measure M financial statements. So for the 2024 engagement, Pisenti and Brinker was engaged to opine on whether or not the special revenue funds and the debt service funds were free of material misstatement. So essentially, are the financial statements that you have a draft copy of free of material misstatements and factual and without bias. And I like to present this slide early in the presentation just because there's always a lot of misconception about what the relative roles are between the auditors and management. So we like to point this out just so that everybody's clear of who performs which tasks in the financial statement audit. So management, their responsibilities are for the financial statements. We provide our opinion at the beginning of the financial statements, but all of the information within the financial statements, the underlying financial transactions that represent the financial statements, the footnote disclosures that describe the financial statements, and the responsibility for maintaining a system of internal controls to ensure the quality of the financial statements. Those are all the responsibility of management. As the auditor, we are required under professional standards to provide our opinion on whether or not the financial statements are free of material misstatement. And we do that through a risk-based audit approach. A risk-based audit approach means that we evaluate the inherent risk, which is the overall complexity of the underlying accounting transactions and processes. And we consider control risk, such as the internal controls over the financial statements, and we then set and perform a series of detailed tests and other auditing procedures based on our risk assessment, at the conclusion of which we then provide our results and provide our opinion on whether or not the financial statements are materially accurate. As I say, we perform a test of year-end balances, we perform analytical procedures, send confirmations, and we compare the footnote disclosures against checklists and other source documentation to make sure that they are complete, meaning that all the required disclosures are included and that there are no unnecessary disclosures that may mislead the readers. This is just a very, very high level allocation of the approximate time that we spend during the audit. As you can see, the largest figure here is the compliance with Measure M. So the majority of our procedures that we perform on a time basis level go towards making sure that the Measure M funds are allocated between the funds correctly, that the expenditures meet the appropriate definition for each fund that they are captured within, that the bond payments are made timely, that the other Measure M compliance requirements such as maintenance of effort and other miscellaneous compliance requirements, that those are all are all achieved, and that there's also a system of internal controls to ensure that those are achieved. Revenue recognition and accounts receivable is another significant area. We want to make sure that all the revenue is properly recorded and that it's going to the correct program. We then again perform tests of year-end balances. So we want to make sure that the transactions are correct and accurate throughout the year. And then we want to make sure that the information on the statement of activities, that those year-end balances are complete and accurate and correctly valued. Last but not least, the financial statement presentation and disclosure. We want to make sure that, again, all the information is in there, is complete, that there isn't any unnecessary information, and the information is free of management bias. So essentially just the facts and not any management opinion or any areas where management could put their thumb on the scale of a disclosure through improper estimates or things like that. As I mentioned earlier, the Measure M compliance testing is the largest area of the focus for our audit. I mentioned a number of these just a moment ago, but I'll go through them quickly. Reconciling the sales tax revenue collections to bank statements, making sure that the sales taxes are allocated in accordance with the strategic plan, making sure that the expenditures are allowable and that they're consistent and within the right Measure M activity, and then all the other compliance requirements related to the bond activity. So non-compliance related audit procedures. Again, this is just a sprinkling of them. This is not a complete list, but we start by reviewing the accounting policies and procedures, making sure that we have an understanding of internal controls. We call that our planning phase. We then perform a test of the statement of activities or the balance sheet to substantiate those year-end amounts and review for cutoff. Cutoff is just another way to make sure that all the items that should be in the June 30 financial statements are included, and items that take place in July and afterwards are excluded. And again, we review the draft financial statement and footnote disclosures to make sure that they're complete and accurate. Some of the other revenue testing procedures that we do is reviewing the grant agreements, review board minutes. We perform analytical procedures, essentially comparing one set of financial transactions within the financial statements to another to make sure that they seem reasonable. And then we also reconcile grant revenue, contract revenue, unearned revenue to the underlying grant agreements and to a grant tracking documentation spreadsheet to make sure that there's no obvious misstatements as it relates to those revenues, making sure that if revenue is being recognized, that there's an appropriate and correct grant agreement that contains enough revenue in the agreement to justify that recognition. So at this point, we are essentially done with the audit. We are obviously waiting for this board's approval prior to finalizing. So we like to say we're about 95%, but we're probably closer to 99%. So I can say that we are going to issue an unmodified opinion, which is a clean audit opinion. That means that we believe the financial statements are materially accurate. And we did not note any instances of non-compliance for Measure M. And this is just a list of required communications that we as the auditor are required to communicate to those charged with governance so that you can fulfill your duties. We did not identify any unusual accounting transactions. We did not identify any fraud or illegal acts. And I always like to point out that had we identified anything like that, we would not wait to this this meeting to bring it to management's attention if we did identify any issues. We didn't have any difficulties obtaining evidence for our audit, meaning that our scope, we were allowed to ask for whatever documentation we deemed was necessary for our audit, and management complied with those requests. And I would like to thank management for their cooperation during the audit. We did not have any uncorrected misstatements, so items that we thought were incorrect, but management chose not to correct. And we did not adopt, or Measure M did not adopt any new significant accounting policies. So again, those are all required communications that the professional standards say are key for those charged with governance to know so that you can then perform your duties. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to take any questions on my presentation or on the financial statements themselves.
Thank you, Helen. We'll open it for discussion.
I have questions. Yeah, my questions are less on the audit and probably more on my ignorance on financials themselves. One of the terms I saw here was unearned revenue. What's an example of unearned revenue?
Unearned revenue is a situation where you receive the cash in advance. So it's pretty common in government type work where you get the cash in advance, but you haven't incurred the expense or completed the activity that would then allow you to earn that revenue.
So we might have gotten grant money, for instance, and not have done the project yet. And okay.
Yes.
The other thing was that I didn't understand on page 5, the breakdown. What I see here, the definition here is revenues, expenditures, et cetera. Are those expenditure? There's a line right here which says Measure M sales tax. And the various different categories. Are those the expenditures in that category, or is that the allocation?
No, the top line that says Measure M sales tax, those are the revenues. So it's the revenue subcategory. I can share my screen again and see if I've got that page highlighted.
Because I was gathering that was the sales tax collected, but I was trying to understand the breakdown. Is that the breakdown per Measure M?
Yeah, so this is the total Measure M sales tax collected, and then it's broken down by the different activities as described in the strategic plan. Excuse me. So this is the total revenues. This is the subcategory of revenue, and then here's the grand total for revenue. And then these are the expenditures.
Okay, okay. And one of the things just to understand about Measure M, the percentages that are stated in Measure M are not necessarily achieved every year at exactly that percentage. It's over the line.
The revenues are every year. The revenues are allocated, and again, in accordance with that strategic plan. And I believe that breakdown is disclosed on page 7. So if we look at the total, at least on the sales tax revenue, I should clarify the sales tax revenue is allocated based off of those percentages. The other categories of revenue are not required to be allocated in those that same percentage, because that's going to be based on the activity of each individual program.
Okay, and last one is probably as much for staff as the audit, and we have a large balance, a large cash balance. Are all those funds now allocated to various activities in the future? That's some $60 million, right?
Yeah, I'll let management.
Sorry, this is really my ignorance more than anything else.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy to have this conversation, and we can go into a lot more detail with regard to, looking at the strategic plan sometime together if you'd like, or we could bring it back to this committee for a larger discussion. I will say that, when you were mentioning revenues and not hitting the revenues, I believe you're referring more to the forecast, right? So there was a forecast that, Measure M had an expectation when it was passed by voters in 2004. We are at about 96% of those forecast values. So it was very close to the actual numbers that are within that voter approved expenditure plan. I will say that, the numbers that are in the bank, not all of those have been allocated to projects. Primarily, our local streets project category has been the most undersubscribed because it is a type of project that are not advancing anymore just based on the policy framework that we're existing in, right? So For example, Farmers Lane interchange or Farmers Lane extension, Railroad Avenue interchange, these projects where you're adding capacity to the system that also is a grant framework that requires a one-to-one match. The local jurisdictions are not able to come up with the other dollar that Measure M would then match it. So we have opportunities to reallocate those dollars within the existing project list that's voter approved. And then, of course, the dollars that are allocated are all the dollars within the local street and road program, the local bus transit programs. Those are just dollars in, dollars out by formula.
And a lot of that reallocation comes back to us saying, hey, do you really want to do that or not?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And still there has been no new projects. So we're completely bound currently by those lists of projects that were listed in the 2004 expenditure.
Okay.
So
And
Cameron,
note G, if you look at note G, it has the commitments on there. So so if you take those balances and you go to note G, those are the funds that have been committed, so you can go back and forth and see what is committed under each one of those activities.
And that's what part of what prompted it for me, because when I looked at that percentage in a particular year, that percentage, like Highway 101,
Yeah,
we
there's not the
probably
percentage, these are
front-loaded all
actual
the Highway
dollars.
101
Yeah.
funding.
Yeah,
So,
no G though, has the actual dollars that are these are actually specific commitments that we've already made that haven't expended yet.
okay.
So such as Hearn.
so Cameron, what will happen to the local street money when the Measure M?
Yeah, so the dollars that are within those accounts will remain in those accounts, and they will come to this committee as part of the programming and allocation process that we always incur. The only difference is going to be when, Kellen's reporting out to you, or whenever an auditor is reporting out to you, or when you get a strategic plan, there's no longer going to be the revenue side of the equation. So those dollars, for example, on the Highway 101, we have mitigation and monitoring that's going to continue for the next 10 years. So those dollars are going to continue to be expended, and they need to stay in the bank because we need that to meet those project commitments. Also with the LSP projects, any jurisdiction that has an existing project that wants to move forward, they can make a request for programming. It would come to this body for programming and the board, and then would come to this body for the allocation as well.
But my question, the measure will end at after 20 years, what will happen to the extra money?
It will continue to be expended within the expenditure plan requirements.
Okay.
Yes. So
Thank you.
the expenditures will continue, the revenue will not.
Any other comments or questions about?
One last question. What's the special revenue? What does that actually mean?
So, go ahead, Kellen.
Oh, I was just gonna say, the special revenue fund is a specific accounting term within the government accounting framework. And essentially it's a place for governments to house monies that have a requirement to be spent in a certain way. So it's really an accounting terminology of how you track the revenues and the related expenditures.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? How about on the screen? Do we have any?
I do not see any members on the screen wanting to speak on this item.
So do I hear a motion to approve the draft as presented?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? I see none. Who are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? I see none. Abstention.
Just one, because I didn't hear the whole production.
Okay, one abstention. The draft, passed. I believe, the final, version will come back to us, or how does it work?
So the final version will go to the board, and it will also include the RCPA audits as well as the SCTA audits. And they will be part of board action in December, so the December 9th board meeting.
But in the final, version, if there are changes, they would be highlighted or, presented, or this
So-
is the final version?
And so prior years, we've never had an issue. It's always been, substantial conformance with the document that goes to this board. But if there is anything that is major that has changed within the document, we can come back to this board and make sure they're informed of it. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll give it to our chair. He's here now.
Apologize for my lateness. I was doing something fun, giving $8,500 to the construction corps for taking care of some future workforce issues in the engineering contracting industry.
But quickly on this, sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
On this item, if you want a printed copy of this audit, let me know and I'm happy to print it. I did not print it as part of the documents here just because I didn't know how many in that 20 pages. Didn't want to waste a bunch of paper. So if you want a printed copy, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that.
But we have it in the link, right?
Yes, you do. So if you want a physical paper copy, please let me know.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa,
But
for,
I give it back. We are ahead of time.
oh, you look at that. Don't screw it up. Okay, good. By the way, thank you guys for putting the timelines out there. That's very helpful. So we're on to Brenton and the Pisenti and Brinker contract renewal action. Yes, hang on a
Shouldn't we
second.
be making a recommendation to the board that this be approved?
Would we just vote on? I'm sorry.
That's what we just voted on.
Isn't
That's what we just voted on.
that what we just voted on?
We were on B4A, right?
Yeah, we just did 4A and you guys voted
We
to,
finished before.
yeah.
We would.
Okay.
What am I missing here? Tested me because I came in late. We're on 4B, the presentation for the Pisenti and Brinker contract
Yes.
renewal. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Brenton, and I don't have a visual presentation, so we'll just be talking. And so for this item, we are asking this body to recommend for the board that we go for a 2-year extension for the Pisenti and Brinker contract. The Pisenti and Brinker contract was initially signed in 2020 for 3 years, and 2 years ago, it was extended for 2 further years. So this is the final year of the existing Pisenti and Brinker contract. And because of the quality of the service that we've received from Pisenti and Brinker and the implementation of Go Sonoma that will be starting in this year, we are asking that we go forward again with Pisenti and Brinker for 2 additional years to take advantage of Kellen's experience and Pisenti and Brinker's history with these programs as we implement Go Sonoma with the Measure M converting over. As we see in here, we received a quote from Pisenti and Brinker for approximately $133,000 for the 2-year extension. And excuse me. Yeah, so $133,000 for the 2-year extension, which includes the new Go Sonoma program. And just in comparison, for the prior 2 years, our budget was $118,800, which was just Measure M, did not include the Go Sonoma program. And so I think that that's pretty much what we need to know. So we're asking for your approval to go to the board for a 2-year extension.
Shouldn't, because of efficiency, shouldn't they be cutting their cost to us? I'm just.
Oh, and I'm sorry, one more note. After this 2-year extension, we'll be going, our plan is to work with the Auditor Controller's Office to issue a new RFP to find an additional auditor. Either Pisenti and Brinker would be eligible to bid again, but it would be an open RFP after this.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion. In fact, I think they are doing a good job. And I'll make a motion to approve the renewal.
Yeah, I'd like to second. Okay, either way.
Any further discussion? Yeah, Tom's first and then Jerry.
Thank you. So our role on this body is to represent the taxpayers. And so my understanding is Pisenti and Brinker have been around as our auditors since the initiation of the program. Is that correct?
I believe it's only been since 2020 for this.
Okay, so I know that in 2020, there was a new contract with Pisenti and Brinker, but and there was an RFP at that time, and we did take some bids from other parties, and I did participate, I think, with Dennis on the review committee for that. And this body did recommend adopting, taking Pisenti and Brinker on. But my understanding is Pisenti and Brinker does a tremendous amount of work in this county, and that we really don't have other eyeballs on the financial picture. So I understand that this body is transitioning from Measure M to the Go Sonoma, and that may be a good time to have some continuity in our financial audit. But I also think that asking us to recommend no change is we should at least discuss the pros and cons of having an additional set of eyes looking at our public tax monies. I'm curious whether others feel that way or just open the conversation. Thank you.
Jerry, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, I wanted to discuss it because the flip side, which is this, is that my impression is with an audit that 90% of what you spend your time doing is figuring out what is it I'm supposed to be looking at? What is it that you had as standards that you're following as your organization? And what are you hamstrung by and what do we have to do? And that's a large amount of work. And they've been doing that work and the continuity is more important to me than it is getting a separate voice on it and opening it all back up again and looking at it and saying, let me all learn this stuff. And part of the reason I ask the dumb questions I ask, this stuff, Measure M and complying with this and the government requirements and our requirements that we have in our county are complicated enough. And absorbing that and then being able to use that to measure what staff has done and make sure they've complied with all of that, I think is what makes it so inexpensive for us so far. So I don't think that the fee that they're charging is a terribly high fee.
doesn't
right?
seem to be.
So it's the flip side, Tom,
I would just go to Tom's point, because we've been reviewing these contract extensions now for a number of years while we both served on this board. What would we gain from opening it up at this point? Particularly as we move over to Measure DD, the Sonoma Act. It seems like what we gain from the continuity from Jerry's comments is far greater than any kind of closed-in bidding process. In the future, 2 years from now, I would say, probably I would side on your side of that argument. But what's to benefit today?
Well, I mean, it's a good question, and I wanted to be sure we at least had a chance to talk about it. My sense is that, and especially this was true maybe with all the continuity that was in Measure M before, there may be things that a new auditor would question, call to staff's attention, and staff might work with the auditor to resolve. Things that maybe have been looked at and judged by the existing team that might just be re-looked at. I recognize, though, with the transition to the new measure, that it's going to be complicated enough. And so that could, it could cost more to bring a new team on at this time. But I do like the way, John, you laid the groundwork for us to take a hard look and maybe go out to bid next time. And I think that's staff's recommendation as well, is to go out next time. And I do think we should look hard at and do a good job of recruiting good.
And Tom, 90%, one of the things my friend says that start an argument on one side and I'll take the other side. And if you flip over, I'll switch over. So the other side, your side of this also would be this, is a new auditor coming in would have a fresh look and then be, quite honestly, questioning the procedures that staff has adopted and say, are these the right procedures today? Or is this the way we should be doing these things? But I don't think, I think weighing the two right now, the consistency is a lot more important.
Steve first and then Aaron.
My recollection is that when we chose these auditors, the understanding was that for 5 or 7 years, we might renew with them, but that there would come a time when we would change auditors. And I don't remember how many years we chose, but I think that's a process. That's a good process. You don't want to have the same auditors forever. But once they understand your operation, it's best to continue with them for a given number of years.
I would agree with that unless there's a reason to jump off. Eris.
So Tom, I have a little bit of a similar feeling often when I'm looking at ballot measures or I'm at a city council meeting and someone's talking about a no bid contract and you know, and all of that. There's times when I get a little, you know, is that doing the best work? But in my role with a nonprofit, where we have long-term contracts that then sometimes we have to apply all over again to the same entity to do the same work, and the amount of work it takes to do those proposals is really big. And is there any benefit to anybody, you know, from that? And how grateful we were when our last contract was just extended. So, you know, you see both ends of that, but if it's gonna be put out to bid again in a couple of years, you know, I see no reason not to extend it now.
Wilson?
In fact, my understanding, their current contract allows just two extensions, two-year extensions. So my question, you know, after the 2 years, you know, what I'm hearing, there is a direction to have new auditors, you know. So when we release an RFP, do we exclude them from bidding on it or not?
No, they would be eligible to propose again.
They can come back, in fact, as an auditor even after 2 years.
Yes.
Thank you.
So let me just add a little bit to that. So I did want to just come up and just correct. So the contract that went into effect in 2020, we did have Pisenti and Brinker prior to 2020 as well. But in 2020, you know, it was during the pandemic. This was all with Zoom and everything. We did a full RFP, right? So you had SCTA staff, you had Dennis Harder from the Citizens Advisory Committee represented. We got 3 different proposals. We interviewed multiple auditors. It was a very robust process. And Pisenti and Brinker shined, right, in their proposal, their abilities. And they were selected unanimously by that committee to continue to be our auditor. With that, though, there is, when you talk about like excluding Pisenti and Brinker, there's no exclusion of an existing consultant in an RFP process that we've ever done here. We typically do an open RFP. But there is a state law that requires the principal in charge to rotate at a certain frequency. So part of the reason for staff recommendation to redo the RFP in 2 years is because Kellen's will expire in 2 years. So he will no longer be able to be our principal in charge with Pisenti and Brinker after the next 2 years. So we will then put out an RFP, regardless of the firm that's selected. Kellen will not be our principal in charge.
Mm-hmm. You know, just a comment, I did not advocate for excluding them, you know.
Danny, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'll further discuss with Steve some other time about why he thinks you have to change auditors. But anyway, yeah, it makes no sense. But anyway, if you're doing a good quality job and they're providing it on a timely basis and a cost-efficient basis, why wouldn't you not stay with them? And that's publicly traded companies as well, that they, whenever you do change auditors, it's actually a big deal. And they want to know why and what's the excuse.
Yeah, I would actually advocate for an exclusive negotiating agreement in 2 years and see if that could be attained because of the knowledge that they have. If we're just changing the principal, the person in charge of the accounting, they've got all the records. They haven't done anything wrong. We may have some fine points we want to negotiate with them and ask questions about and so forth, but rather than go through the exhaustive process that we went back through in 2020, maybe we could shorten that process a bit to an exclusive negotiating agreement. Is that something that we could do? Is that a possibility?
So it would take board approval with regard to, meeting our procurement requirements. It is a possibility. At this point, we're recommending going back out for an RFP to just be in compliance with the admin code and not seek the exception that would be a large lift as well to have that exclusive negotiating. But if that is something that this body would like to further discover, I'd recommend, we can do that timely, basically 2 Octobers from now, not next October, but the October after this when we're wrapping up the next.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I think you gave us a couple numbers. One was the cost to renew, which is about 113,000.
133 for 2 years.
Representing about 65,000 a year. And then did you also give us the cost of a typical audit?
Not the typical audit, but our
What
current, our
had it been-
current,
What had it been costing prior to the renewal?
we are, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So here's the last 2-year extension that we did, right? So the total for all the audits that they perform from SCTA, Measure M, as well as RCPA, and then the single audits and special audits that are sometimes, single audits are always required when we go over a certain dollar amount of federal funds. And then the special audit, depending on, what the requests are of the auditor to dig into different parts. Totals 58,000 in 23 and then 60,000 in 24. So the audit that we're working on right now is the 60,000. When we go into the extension, the big difference is this Go Sonoma line item, right? This kind of goes to Moose's question from before, where even though Measure M revenue is going to stop in 25, we're going to still have it. And you can see because the revenue stops in 25, they did do a drop. I mean, staff agrees with these numbers, right? So they went from, 14,800 for the Measure M audit, and they dropped it down to 12,700 because they will not have that sales tax revenue component of their audit anymore. And then the rest of the programs have a, an escalation factor. I don't know the percentage offhand, but it's a modest escalation factor, as you can see, where it goes from 19 to 19,850. So we agree with those
It
numbers.
appears to be quite modest, the increase. And it was extra work.
Yeah, seems reasonable to me, so.
Yeah. Seems reasonable.
Any further discussion? So we'll call for the question, whether to extend Pisenti and Brinker on the audited financials for 2 more years. All those in favor? Oppose? Any,
I'm going to abstain from the vote.
and 1 abstention, Tom Conlon. Yeah. All right,
And
motion
let's
carries.
be clear, we're recommending it to the board.
Yeah.
We can't do it.
We're recommending to the board, yeah.
We can't do anything.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Gonna approve our minutes.
All right,
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Brenton.
We haven't accomplished anything, actually.
Okay, Shauna, you're up.
Yeah.
Obviously read this.
The item before you was an item that we tried to bring you last month, but because of the lack of quorum and lack of time, it got continued to this month. We did, however, pass out the text of the proposed change. Hopefully, everyone has had the opportunity to read through it. So I'll just go really quickly through what the proposal is. SCTA was notified by the County of Sonoma that they would like to make some changes to one of the projects that was approved and programmed in Go Sonoma. So how do we do this? Because the policies that are included in the strategic implementation plan are silent on what we should do about project scope changes, amendments to the project. So staff has produced a revision to the policy, and that is what is shown in red in the attachment. But essentially it says, if you want to make a change to your project, you'll need to provide us, SCTA staff, with any number of documents that will help us make the decision on whether or not this is an appropriate scope change, where we will be able to maintain the benefits that were approved when we evaluated your project. So when we took it to the TAC said must is pretty strong, but so what we did is, and hopefully no one is red, green colorblind, but in the blue text, it does include the SCTA may include, but what is provided to the SCTA may include, but not be limited to the following attachments. So whatever it is that we need in order to make our decision, and then SCTA staff will take a recommendation to both the TAC and the CAC, and then it will go before the board. The board will be the ultimate decider, as they are in all things. So this is our proposal, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
I would just add 1 typo at the beginning. It says due to, and then strike out any, a variety, strike out of the following. Probably ought to leave of in there.
Okay.
That's it for me. Otherwise, thank you for this handout. This is very clear to follow. Who had, yeah, to Jerry.
I actually read it.
Excellent.
And the one that you just brought out, the May, I had a question about that. And I'm going, well, what if they don't submit anything? I don't think that language says you need to submit enough that we can make a determination.
Well, I think it does. Because I went through it. An agency requesting a scope change must submit a request to the SCTA that may include but not be limited to the following.
Yeah, but if they don't submit any of those things,
They'll need to submit whatever it is that we decide needs to be submitted in order for us to make a decision.
and at the very beginning, just make sure I was clear on this. If they have a scope change, with the scope change, it says here that no matter what the scope change is, we give you no more money.
That's correct.
Okay, I just make sure I was reading that correctly. On the next page, it talks about when the staff decides whether to accept or deny. And in the case of accept, it would go to the board, but in the case of deny, the board never hears about it?
SCTA staff would not recommend approval. However, if a project sponsor still wants the board to make the decision, SCTA staff will take the item
Okay.
to the board for a decision without a recommendation of
Okay,
approval.
it was just the way that I was reading it, and it sounded like it would not go regardless.
I mean, I think it would be between staff, whether or not we approve it or whether or not we recommend it. And if we don't, a jurisdiction could go, okay, well, we tried, maybe we'll try again with something else, or, let's see what else we can decide. Or they can say, we don't like your answer, we'd like it to go to the board anyway.
Okay.
So-
Just because I'm a little confused from the wording. So is there a time when they can come with a change and staff can approve it and it doesn't need to go to the board?
No.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, let me qualify. Minor scope changes that do not change, that in staff's opinion, do not change the benefits of the project
Okay.
would probably not go before the board. For example, when a jurisdiction will say, any jurisdiction comes with an application and they say, we will make the following improvements, let's say sidewalk gap closures in various locations that could include XYZ in their application.
Mhm.
And then 2 years later, when they're ready to fund, they go, well, we're going to do 3 of those, but we want to also do one other one that wasn't listed. They're all still the same type of project and the benefits would be the same.
Mhm.
So depending on the location, but
Okay.
probably the same type of benefit. In that case, staff would probably say, yes, that's okay, move forward. And that would not have to go before the board. We would consider that a minor scope change because it wouldn't change the benefits of the project.
John, I'm curious to know the project which, triggered this change, So can you please share it with us?
So the county came to us with changes to the proposal for Airport Boulevard. Their original application included a signal and sidewalks and bike lanes and some other benefits. And now they are proposing not doing the widening for sidewalks and doing a roundabout, they've done an intersection control evaluation, and they feel that a roundabout is a better option for that location, but they are no longer proposing the widening along Airport Boulevard. We've,
Did the roundabout go by the Chevron station?
Laughlin to ordinance, I think.
What's that? I hope not.
Oh, it's gotta be further down, isn't it? Where would the roundabout?
New stuff.
And what about the bike lanes?
So that's a good question. So we've asked them to clarify exactly what it is that they are cutting out and keeping. This is how we got to this point. So part of what we are asking for is for them to provide us with some of this information so that we can make our decision or make our recommendation to the board.
One more wording question. It's on that line that says SCTA staff may accept or deny minor scope changes, blah, 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 that are accepted to the SCTA board as part of the project appropriation request. When I read that part and it said no more money, I didn't understand what an appropriation request is at that point.
Sure. So when a project submits an application, we evaluate it and decide whether or not we're going to give it money. The SCTA board approves it for getting money. Then it gets programmed into the strategic implementation plan, into our funding program. After that happens, a jurisdiction still has to come to us with an appropriation request, at which point the SCTA board says, yes, it's time for you to get your money. Here you go. And that's when we're sort of on the hook for providing the money. It's programmed, but until we do an appropriation, it's not on the in and out books.
That explains it. Okay.
I have, in fact, a follow-up question. Why do you consider this project has changed? The project, improvements to the airport, boulevard, interchange. And during the design process, you can, just chime in, So I'm curious, why do you consider it a change?
Well, it's different. What they want is different from what we evaluated and scored against all the other projects that were submitted. So it seems reasonable for us to ask for them to provide us with enough information for us to determine if the benefits that we originally identified when we had decided to program that project are still being provided by this scope change that they are proposing.
So was it competitive, like award?
Absolutely, it was. Yes, this
Okay,
SCTA, it was part of the SCTA funding program, the first
Okay,
cycle.
got it. Thank you.
You bet.
So just out of curiosity, where would the roundabout be that they want to put in now?
At the intersection where they were proposing the signal. And I believe it's at Laughlin and Ordnance.
Yes.
Okay, so it's quite a ways down there, yeah.
Approach the airport, it's the one that if you turn right, you go up to Windsor. You
Got
turn
it.
left, you go by
Skyline then. That seems more, yeah, okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Yeah, airport, Laughlin, or it's between Laughlin and Ordnance, but yeah, I believe it's at that's at the intersection.
That's a
of
name
Laughlin
change.
and Airport.
That's the problem.
Is there a motion to accept these changes as amended?
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Again,
Any further discussion?
Do you need thirds? and
Mr.
fourths?
Chair, just for clarification, we are asking for a recommendation to the board.
Yeah, do we need to go through that every time? We don't make any decisions.
No, you
at
don't.
all.
We are asking for a recommendation.
I don't think I have to clarify that every single time because
Making sure.
every time you're asking for action, it's a recommendation to the board.
That's right. That's
So
absolutely true.
can we,
Which is
good, we can get
exactly what
past that then.
Staff would do in the instance where there was a discussion and they gotten the data back and they recommended, the board would still be able to override staff's recommendation as well. It sounds to me like Sean is happy with this language and I just want to support Shauna in doing exactly that. So I'll be voting.
You're so easy.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstentions? Got it. Thank you.
Very much.
Steve.
Steve, second.
They're fighting over it. They are fighting over it. They're going to be arm wrestling later. All right, we're on to D, Measure M Financials, and Brenton, you're up again.
Way ahead of schedule.
Yeah, we are way ahead of schedule. How can we screw this up, Rick? It's like a relay race. He gave me a lead.
Hello, let me
Hello again.
share my report here. Right. Okay. So, yes, so this is a report out only on the Measure M financials for the month of September 30th, for the month ending September 30th. The packet that you were provided includes the balance sheets for Measure M, both the combined balance sheet for the entire Measure M and the individual programs, as well as a year-to-date cash flow report and the program-to-date cash flow report, which is from the beginning of Measure M. Revenues in September 2024 were $2,528,254. And the expenses in September were $287,037, with the year-to-date expenses now $376,577. It's been a quiet start to the year. And we have a cash balance of $72,871,475. The revenues for September were entirely sales taxes for the month of July. And this, sorry, I have a thing here so I can't see it. There we go. So just as a comparison, the taxes we received in September were 3.45% below what we received this month in 2023. And then the next line, we skipped the year-to-date earned because there's only been the 1 month of actually earned sales taxes this year. So go down to year-to-date received, and our year-to-date received is $8,069,110. And so that includes the sales taxes we received in July and August, but that were actually applied to May and June of last year. And those are down 3.28%. The expenses of $287,037 were $137,449 in consulting services, $100,940 in contributions to other governments, and $32,936 in staff time. And that's the end of my report, unless you have any questions.
Jerry had his hand up first.
I always I'm good at this.
It's like the voice, whoever turns their chair first.
Yeah. So the year-to-date is larger. Is that because there were expenses that were before September that applied to this year?
There were some minor expenses. There was rent for 2 months and some staff time, but because we had no revenues and they were $70,000 combined, we didn't report out
Okay.
last year.
And one of the questions I had, and I probably asked it in the previous meeting, but the wrong way. I asked about the Amazon effect. When somebody ships something from one place to another, and sales tax, I know, is usually collected for the state. It's in the software programs for the company that sells whatever. But having written those programs, I never remember writing one for a county, and here's a county sales tax. So if somebody buys something from Amazon, do we get any sales tax from that?
We do receive sales tax.
Do we get county sales tax from that, or it's just state sales tax?
I believe it's county sales tax. With our HDL report, we do have Amazon as one of the vendors. Yeah.
Because they pay the total sales tax, including.
Yeah, but in the software programs I've written in the past, you didn't break things down by county level, so you wouldn't know.
Never knew the answer to that
tax would be.
question. Rick first and then Tom.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why we're spending so little money compared to how much we're making.
Our largest expenditures of the year generally are the local street repair and bus transit. And both of those charges just went out in this month, so you'll see them next month. Yeah.
Tom and then Mosa.
Just to Jerry's question about Amazon, I believe the governor a couple of years ago now was in favor of rescoring where the taxation would occur. And the proposal was to have it occur at the warehouse and not at the delivery. And that could affect our county dramatically. And I have to admit, I've lost track on whether that law ever passed or not. But if you're interested in it, we should probably look into it.
I'm just curious about it because it's not just here. We'll have the same kind of thing occur if we end up with sales tax, for instance, for transportation throughout the 9 counties.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, it's a kind of a transfer of wealth from the coast to the inner, where the warehouses are.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Arizona stands to gain a lot because they're building just super warehouse and distribution center after super warehouse and distribution center. And I've always wondered, where's the money in it for them? Because it's going to make their roads deteriorate. That actually makes some sense that they're going to redo that. Interesting. Mosa.
Yeah, can you refresh, my memory? What's the revenue in 2023 in comparison to the previous year?
Do you
You know,
mean
you
twenty
mentioned
twenty-three
the-
versus 2022?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have the 22 numbers with me.
I meant, you know, the fiscal year that ends June 2024 with the fiscal year that ends June 30th, 2023. Do you have that number?
I don't have that one with me right now. No, I'm sorry.
Can you provide us with that number later, please?
Yes, so you would like to know the total sales taxes that we received for the year ending June 30th, 2024 versus the year ending.
Yeah. Just to take an idea, our revenue, is it going down or up? Yeah.
But wasn't that in our year-end report?
Yeah, our audited financial statements.
Is it there?
I can't pull it up now while I have this showing, but I can pull it up in a few minutes
There's
later. and
no
come back.
rush. You can, you know, Drew can send it to the
Oh,
group.
it
yeah.
doesn't, it's not comparative there. Let me see if it is. They're not comparative. But you can look at the prior year's audit financial and get those.
Yeah.
Easy to get.
Yes, or I can report out in just a few minutes.
Yeah, and you used to provide us, you know, once in a while, you know, like I forgot the name of the company that gives you information about projections for the sales tax. How often do you provide the group with that, you know, information?
That was quarterly. I was out sick last meeting. I thought that it was presented last meeting, but we'll make sure we can provide the HDL report out again soon if you didn't receive it the last meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this is just information only, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oops, that's right.
And Dana, you're up. All right. Active transportation plan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to give a brief update on the status of the active transportation plans, the countywide active transportation plan that SCTA is leading along with updates to 7 of our jurisdictions' active transportation plans. The countywide plan acts as an umbrella under which the jurisdiction level plans sit. And so it provides an overview, and the local jurisdiction plans are adopted by each individual jurisdiction's governing body. So I wanted to let this group know that the draft countywide active transportation plan, as well as the draft plans for Cloverdale, Healdsburg, Sebastopol, Sonoma, and Rohnert Park are all out for public review. There's a link in the staff report to these plans and a form where comments can be submitted. Those are out for public review through the end of November. And yeah, happy to take any questions, but just wanted to make sure that you are all aware of the draft plans that are out for review.
Eris first. Woohoo, she's at, yeah.
Yeah.
Numero uno.
So I have sat through a gazillion of the presentations about this, going through all of the different jurisdictions, and I've been looking at the docs. I haven't had a chance to read every single one yet, but one question that continually comes up for me that no one has so far been able to answer. So 10 years ago, did a similar plan. And now here we are, and in the packet is this slide of, you know, how many miles of everything exists today. But we never see it against how many miles existed when the last plan was done. Or how many of all the and we see here how many are in the projections, but we never look backwards. And I want to know how many of all those miles that were in the last plan actually got done. And it seems to me that SCTA should be the entity tracking them, because a few of the jurisdictions, well, actually 2 of the ones who aren't even in here, San Rosa and Petaluma, do a pretty good job of regular reporting out on their implementation of their plans, which they've also updated more recently. But I've called jurisdictions with their plan in my hand and said, okay, I know this project got built, but if these 10 projects that are on your high priority list, are there any others that have been built? I'll have to get back to you, right? Like nobody's tracking it. And so that would seem to be an important part of the planning process that I would like to see included in the new report.
Yeah, so I appreciate that comment, and it is something that we have really only done at intervals of times when we update the plans. And it is actually included, monitoring implementation of the plans is actually included in both the jurisdiction level plans and the countywide plan. The
Directive to do what?
to monitor and report out on implementation.
Report out to who and how frequently?
So the jurisdiction plans, the draft plans have recommendations for staff to report out to their governing bodies annually on a number of metrics, and that's including number of facilities and miles built and projects implemented. We are working with our countywide bicycle pedestrian advisory committee on a process for the jurisdictions to report to SETA so that we can combine all of that and report out on progress countywide. So we are still working out the details of, logistics and how that will work. But that is an element in the draft plans that we have not had before. So
There's a lot of variation across the plans in terms of, some that are very robust and some that look like you guys need to be bolder, and some of them that list of metrics are kind of like there's no baselines in some of them. And so again, some of them look very robust and some of them, and I will be putting all kinds of and I have been and will continue to give lots of input to the consultants and to the different jurisdictions, but that's just another one of the sort of overall things that I've noticed is real variety.
Can I, through the chair, can I ask, do we have a system for ranking who did a good job with their ATPs and who needs improvement? And a way to help the ones that need improvement to kind of learn from the people that did a better job?
are you referring to the planning or the implementation?
Well, that's a good point. So I mean, ultimately implementation, I think, to Eris's point, but like if, let's say Sevastopol did a great job, and I'm just looking here, and Cloverdale needed help, is there a way that we help them with that, or just say, boy, Cloverdale, you guys are terrible? And then, where's District 4? Yeah.
We'd want a phone call, record it too. I wanna hear that.
Yeah, is there, because I've read some of them. But it would be interesting to have a way to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges and to say to the ones, hey, this might be something that we learned in Sonoma that, Santa Rosa might want to try or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in a broad sense, that is a lot of what we try to do is, help jurisdictions who are having a harder time, getting funding for projects or, and I mean, this effort was to help mostly our smaller jurisdictions with limited staff to produce the plans. But I mean, I don't think we're necessarily grading them, but I think that, yes, that's, and also kind of through our committees and our kind of staff sharing, there's opportunities for kind of lessons learned from other jurisdictions. But yeah, I also wanted to mention that we did take a look at that snapshot of our last countywide plan was updated in 2014, but we did do a refresh of the project list in 2019 and looked at the existing facilities that were built. And then we compared that with the update to the existing facilities that we started through this planning process. So we do have a snapshot of that comparison.
These numbers are all in those other documents.
We actually developed that for our CTP process and didn't include like that exact comparison in the draft countywide plan, but it's something that we may be able to incorporate into the final that makes sense.
Excellent, because that's what I was, after hearing Eris, that was what I was going to suggest, is it sounds like that data has just been collected, baseline data, and it would inform this conversation much better. And it doesn't sound like it's that burdensome on you or the consultants to pull that together. So there are other metrics though, beyond the one that you cited. I think that's just road or bike lane miles is the one you were talking about. And I know Margot is working on some new metrics for the quick build implementation that they're engaged in now. And I think that's what you were referring to as well, right? Is that the county's looking at metrics across the board for how to track these things, because we're increasingly, this is what our grant funding is going to be dependent on, is being able to prove that we're doing what we need to do to get our goals.
Yeah, I mean, I was more specifically talking about the reporting metrics that are included in the draft active transportation plan. So more broadly, all active transportation projects.
Right. So I guess increasingly we're starting to see level of traffic stress, which is the bicycle perspective. It's analogous to level of service for the car perspective. And there's a pedestrian indicator as well. Those are the kinds of things we could begin to be tracking. My other question though was really, you did do a round of outreach to the jurisdictions. And I was curious if you could just qualitatively characterize how that process went and how much the consultant draft plan changed in reaction to that data collected from the public.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this process with our consultants summer 2023. And that fall, we did a round of public engagement to get input on barriers, needs, ideas, kind of more broad. And then we came back to, and we did a public survey as well as pop-up events in each jurisdiction that was participating in the plan. That spring, we came back after doing a level of traffic stress analysis and taking all the feedback from the first round of public input and some other technical analysis. We came back with proposed projects, brought those out to the public and did workshops in each jurisdiction as well as some pop-up events and another public survey, and brought that back to develop the draft plans. So there's been 2 full rounds of public engagement. We also did partner with the Latino service providers to do a kind of a youth-focused stakeholder engagement event to look for barriers that were more specific to youth. And then we did another stakeholder event with people with disabilities and seniors.
My question was more, did the project lists change or the priority rankings change a lot, a little, not much?
I would say it varied quite a bit from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. There were definitely a lot of changes altogether. Some of those may have been more concentrated in certain jurisdictions.
Right, based on the specificity of the input from the public and okay. Thank you.
Jerry. On part of Tom's theme, one of the things that I think we need some other measures besides just miles of, I've noticed in Sebastopol, we have bike lanes and they go along and suddenly there's no bike lane. So 500 feet worth of bike lane, then there's no bike lane because of course, parking is more important than bike lanes. And then we pick up a bike lane, which is 1.5 feet wide. And then, so I don't ride my bike in Sebastopol. I had a question on the micro mobility slide that's in the presentation, only because I don't know the terms. And I was hoping you could explain some of the terms. And I also saw later in the presentation, the Redwood bike share. And I loaded the app yesterday because I keep taking Smart. And I wrote to the director once saying, wouldn't it be great? Because actually a student at MTC came up with this, said, shouldn't you have something like that at the end of the line so you can get to the ferry? And so I've loaded the app and I just figure it's only going to cost me $3.50 to cover the half mile. But can you explain some of these terms in micro mobility? We have motorized scooter, we have electrically motorized boards, and we have scooters and docked bicycles and dockless bicycles.
Yes, so, sorry, this is a slide in the presentation. I'm just gonna jump to it so I can,
Okay.
so that I could see exactly what you're talking about.
Because I had an electric scooter and it weighed 350 pounds and I wasn't sure it was one of these.
That's quite a scooter.
So I think that, I mean, when we're talking about micromobility, it's a broad term, but I think it's more generally referring to the stand-up electric scooters,
okay.
kind of lighter weight electric scooters. And sorry, I'm just looking for.
I was having this discussion with my cousin in Rome, Italy, because we all called everything a scooter.
Okay.
Really interesting. I was on a call this morning with the other EDs of the other bicycle coalitions in the Bay Area. We meet regularly and the word micro mobility came up and we all hate it because people don't know what it means, but we haven't come up with a good alternative yet. But basically it's any other thing that somebody rides on the bike lane.
Magic carpet.
Usually for a short distance. So dockless scooters are the little scooters that don't.
You stand on?
Like the bird ones that they used to put all around Windsor. Docked scooters have stations. Dockless bikes are just on their own. Docked ones have a station, like 6 or 8 in a row that you see.
Okay.
And they're all used usually for the typical last mile connection, either this a station to something else, or within like a city where you're just gonna go like 8 blocks.
So for instance, I couldn't figure out with the Redwood, is that dockless or docked? Because they don't actually electric.
They're docked.
Yeah.
Chain them to something, but there's no charging that goes on with it.
So, yeah, I mean, you could also describe it as station-based. Because docked is sometimes referred to as the ones in like San Francisco where you have to actually put it in the dock in order to lock it. It's a small nuance, but I think we like to call the Redwood Ride bikes station-based because there's geofencing around the stations that will say if you're parked in the right spot. And if the rack is full and you need to lock it to itself or another fixed object next to the rack, that's going to count as.
So is the distinction
going to the station.
significant? Because I was in Rome and everybody in Rome is using limes. You get all over the city on limes and they're dropped wherever you stop.
Yeah, so I think that's called like a free floating system. So I think that's really the distinction is whether you need to bring them back to a specified area or you could park it anywhere.
Okay.
Tom.
A couple of questions, and the first one may touch back on what Tom was asking. Public engagement, how do public comments get digested in all of these things? Like, do you weigh things? Is this on connectivity? Is it on safety? Is it on, does it come from an economically disadvantaged area? Are things weighted on any of factors like that? As you deal with I know there are consultants involved with this. How does that get ground into the response?
I mean, I think that there's been an effort to accommodate all of the input that's been given. There are situations where, we've gotten comments about a desire for a certain facility and talked with the city about feasibility and maybe what has been asked for. The city is not, is saying that it's can't be done for one reason or another, or that maybe some modification of it could be done. So there are those things that have happened.
But the comments get classified in some manner?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the safety is definitely flagged and, but the comments are not necessarily weighted against each other. One thing we did do with the comments is we did group the projects into 3 different tiers, kind of high, medium, low priority, based off of a number of factors that are generally aligned with the kind of goals of the plan and also with most grant applications. Projects that after we put those into tiers, projects that the public were supportive of, and we had, multiple comments from the public supporting those projects, we did boost those up.
Based on the comments or
Based
the
on the comments.
intensity of the comments?
Yeah.
Okay. Second question, in dealing with consultants and looking at the tiers of projects, do you get into discussions of induced demand? Heaven knows there's induced demand involved with road traffic, like with freeway lanes, but in grinding through these, like if there's a bike lane or path from this area to this area, and given the demographics there, is it likely to induce people using bikes or scooters or whatever in lieu of cars? Like, is this area ripe? Do you and the consultants get into the weeds that deeply?
We did look at land uses and, key destinations. We looked at things like schools, libraries, places with concentration of housing and employment. And, looked for connectivity between those areas. The level of traffic stress analysis looked at all roads and the level of comfort of using those roads for active transportation. So there was, we tried to make connections between those areas and improve the level of traffic stress around, or create a facility, right? A planned facility with connections, with low level of traffic stress connections.
Okay.
Thank you, Dana.
You're welcome.
Nice report.
Thank you.
2 minutes to spare. Good job. I love this.
It was
Thanks.
scheduled for 5 minutes and it took 20.
Yeah, that's okay though. She ended 2 minutes. We're on to announcements. Yeah, sure.
Just a simple one. I'm always floored by this. With the volunteer stuff I do with MTC, I'm now taking SMART and then the ferry to get to the meetings. There's no seats available on SMART anymore. There are times on SMART where it's standing room only. And I'm not talking about rush hour. I'm talking about middle of the day between Petaluma and San Rafael. SMART is full. Often I get on at Roanoke Park. I have to look for a seat, and I'm clearly sharing with somebody just by Roanoke Park. We're only 3 stops down. It's very successful, and it looks like it's become more and more successful. And I don't think that's because it was free for us old guys. I think it's just basically you can get places so much faster, and it's too bad that we haven't worked out yet how to feed SMART. And I've had writers on SMART with me complaining if they can get to a station where the transit district owns the parking, then they have a way to get onto the train. But otherwise, they're all trying to drive there. I'm driving there because if I want to make it to my meeting, I have to leave the day before because the earliest bus gets to the SMART station too late in order to make it to my meeting at 10 o'clock in San Francisco. But SMART is really successful, and I hope we find lots of ways to support it more and more. It's a great backbone.
Yeah, thank you. Harris.
I've got the 3 things to share. One is to tag off of Tim's comment about report cards. My colleagues at the Marin Bike Coalition did a report card thing online that we kind of copied and did up here, which is to look at bike parking at all of our city halls, right? All of our cities have said good things about wanting to make it easier for folks to bike. So let's look at how easy it is to bike to a city council meeting. So we ran around and took pictures at all the city halls, gave them grades A, through D, and it's all up on our website. And at least one jurisdiction has commented unhappily about
They didn't like their grade.
grade that they got, but, so we're gonna be doing that on other stuff. I think after my recent trip to Kaiser to get my updated vaccines, I think healthcare facilities might be the next bike parking report card. A second, Bike Coalition's looking for a new office. The ceiling is falling in on our heads and we're just tired of it. And so if anyone has ideas, thoughts, suggestions of places, preferably in, a central area, can let me know. And then a third, I've been quite involved with the Measure S campaign in Kitati to repeal the roundabout ban. I'm one of the signers on the ballot argument. But I am being ripped to shreds on social media.
Wow.
I
know
hope
this was such a
somehow
hot
seem to
topic.
Think that there's some kind of conspiracy going on and carrying on about, well, she works for this organization and she makes this salary and they should get this much in government grants and they're using our taxpayer, she's using our taxpayer money for her personal benefit. I'm not sure what personal benefit I'm getting out of it, but any of our grants is accounted for, but it's been sort of entertaining, but we're feeling pretty sure that it's gonna pass.
Okay.
I just have two
Tim's
quick
got
ones, if that's okay. One, in Windsor, where I live, I just want to thank the town on Shiloh Road, put in some little buffers on a bike lane. And it's been really helpful. It's temporary. It's like a little bit of tactical urbanism. But Vice Mayor Potter pushed it through and it actually works. People are now using it to get to Walmart, Home Depot. Second thing, down in the Springs, Supervisor Susan Gorin did her own little bit of tactical urbanism by declaring the Sonoma Plaza by fiat, the Sonoma Springs Plaza. It exists. We put some picnic tables out. Oh, she did. And the county did. So thank you. And people are starting to see that as a public space instead of just a parking lot. So I think a lot more is going to happen there. So, in the Springs, I'll take you down there. You buy me lunch, I'll show it to you. Yeah.
So
Credited Tim with being the instrumental agent in making sure that happened.
Harris, quick question and comment. Your nighttime ride, is that once a month where everybody dolls
Taco
up their
Tuesday?
bikes? I guess it's Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
I got to experience it for the first time.
Every Tuesday, yeah. You
My
went?
only comment, I thought it was
And
really
it's not
cool.
my ride. I mean,
Well,
participate, but I didn't organize. We
I
didn't
thought it
organize.
was really cool. There's some very creative deals there. Somebody might want to talk to the organizers and just tell their participants to be a little bit more accommodating to cars trying to get in and out of their lanes and so forth. I'm at Lower Railroad Square. I'm enjoying the show, but some guy on the other side was not enjoying the show. And it almost came to a confrontation. So all they had to do was like park the bicycle seas and let that guy go through and he could be pissed somewhere else. But anyway, that's my only comment.
That's good
If you
insight.
have any pull with them. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody? Wow. Mission.
You're supposed to use the mallet.
Get
There you go.
it.